Now, hundreds of social grant beneficiaries are still out of pocket due to a technical glitch caused by an IT system upgrade at Postbank. Now, this led to recipients receiving transaction incomplete errors because of the system's communication timeouts. It's now the middle of September and some beneficiaries are unfortunately still unable to access their funds. Meanwhile, human rights organization Black Sash says SASSA must deliver a plan to mitigate further technical issues. Let's bring in Black Sash spokesperson Angie Richardson for more on this. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, Angie. Of course, thousands of people are still without money, and Postbank, of course, can't reassure that something like this won't happen in the future. You now want SASSA to step in here as well.
Well, it's not about SASSA stepping in. They have a constitutional mandate to manage these kind of processes. And the challenge has been is that since the Postbank over from SAPO last year in September, this is the fourth major technical glitch, as they like to refer to it, that has affected beneficiaries. And to date, SASSA or Postbank have not delivered any kind of plan, and there's no kind of forewarning. So people don't, and this affects not just grant beneficiaries as well, it affects the banks, it affects retailers, and there's a whole ecosystem that gets affected by these glitches. And we would have hoped to have heard yesterday at the ministerial briefing, at least some kind of plan to say, look, we're doing these upgrades, this is when we're going to do them, and this is what we can expect. So at least there can be some kind of plan to mitigate these risks, but that was not delivered. And we have, it's kind of like grant beneficiaries have been told, well, you know what, technical glitches are just, they happen, they're common. We must just accept it.
And it is unacceptable. Let's then talk about the status of the master service agreement between SASSA and Postbank. Why is this considered crucial for instances like this especially?
Well, I think, if any of your viewers know, if you're a company and you contract the services of a service provider, there's always a contract. Between SASSA and SAPO, that contract has not been finalized or signed, and that contract's referred to as the master service agreement. So, when Postbank has these technical glitches, SASSA actually doesn't have anything agreed. So there's no penalties that can be applied. In essence, there's no mechanism right now where either entity can be held accountable. It's rather a big gap that needs to be filled.
Oh, well, 100% it is. And it is, when it comes to situations like these, then who will be held accountable? What measures can then be taken for accountability to take place? But of course, when we talk about accountability then, can we also then maybe you can elaborate, because you said you also want an independent investigation into this scenario. Maybe elaborate on that as well.
Well, I think, as Black Sash, we've been in the social grants field for over a decade. And we just know when it comes to these kind of challenges on the sort of scale that we're talking about, government doesn't have the capability. And we don't believe that government will, in good faith, instigate an investigation. And what we're saying is that, and whether it be through Parliament and whether it be through our courts, we need to investigate this. We need sight of this Postbank system, because we don't believe that Postbank themselves understand what is coming next, what can the system actually handle, and what it can't. And I think until there's sight of the actual infrastructure that they have in place, I don't see, and Black Sash, we just don't understand how can SASSA be so confident and the ministers be so confident that this won't happen again.
Then, the question, I think a lot of people then ask the question, why not just use commercial banks? Are there some issues, around that choice to rather choose commercial banks instead of using Postbank to get people's grants to them? What are some of those issues that then are there when it comes to using commercial banks instead?
So So grant beneficiaries do have a choice. They can use, the SASSA sort of mandated supply, which would be Postbank. And the benefits of them using Postbank would be that they, in theory, receive the full value of the full cash value of their grant. So the bank accounts don't incur any banking fees. Whereas if they choose to go to a commercial bank, that's not the case. And why this is important is when you're an elderly pensioner, in many cases in South Africa, we're talking about the poorest of the poor, and they're not just supporting themselves, they're supporting extended family. So when you're talking about a 20 Rand or a 30 Rand or even an 80 Rand deduction from that account, that really is a grocery item, that is electricity. So the banks are possibly more effective, but then they're not. And also, I think what I need to highlight here is constitutionally, grant beneficiaries need to receive the full cash value of their grant. And that's not going to happen if they choose commercial GAMs. So it's kind of like grant beneficiaries are placed in this predicament where go with Postbank and accept all these technical glitches. You never know when you're going to get your grant, or go with commercial banks, which may be more reliable, but you will incur banking fees.
And you said, beneficiaries at the end of the day, they're not being, they are going to put this, their rights are not being upheld in a certain kind of way. Then, of course, we look at constitutional rights of these beneficiaries as well. This also is a huge problem.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing for us as Black Sash is we're talking about the most vulnerable in our society. We're talking about elderly, we're talking about the disabled, and we're talking about, caregivers of children. These people were sleeping on pavements. That's an invasion of their human rights. These people are starving. These people, and one of our paralegals put it to us today on our chat group and just said, for some beneficiaries, they may never recover from this, just because to get home from the pay site, the first time they try to get their grants in the last week, they had to take a loan. Then they came back and they had to take another loan. And they have no way of paying back these loans. So the impact is really devastating. And I think it's disheartening when government just has no plan, when their response is you just got to accept this. This is we're sticking with the Postbank, accept that this is what's going to happen. And we're not going to provide any kind of plan or support to these vulnerable people.
So just to get everything back into perspective, Angie, just, basically what you want now is SASSA and Postbank to get together and come up with a plan so that something like this won't happen again.
Well, they first need to sign that master service agreement. That governs everything.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And also, do you want a specific timeline for this to happen?
Well, yes. I mean, I think there's an urgency to it. And as Black Sash, we're definitely going to be working behind the scenes to see what we can do, because we are concerned. Like, it's September. What's going to happen in October? So the timeline is urgent. The timeline is now.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. That was Angie Richardson, Black Sash Media spokesperson, of course. So many beneficiaries left without, or they didn't receive their grants or partial grants they received because of a technical glitch by Postbank. They did explain what exactly caused this glitch. But of course, at the end of the day, it's these beneficiaries that are suffering, and SASSA and Postbank definitely need to come to an agreement when it comes to that MSA that they need to sign off on, so that some accountability can be accounted for, or they can be accounted for, and also make sure that at the end of the day that the most vulnerable, like Angie just said, they don't suffer. More news and views when Newsnight continues, so do stay with us here on ENCA.